And we're delighted to have Sarah Magee from Remote Diagnostic Technologies. It's the first time we've ever had a session like this, and Sarah is going to take us through, can you put a price on safety? Yeah, your slides should be coming up now, I think.
Hi. First of all, thank you very much to CJI and also to Alistair for allowing me to present to you today. Actually, what I should say is that RDT, a Philips company, because I've just literally about 2 seconds ago found out we've just been acquired by Philips Healthcare. So hopefully that's a good thing, and I've still got a job. What I want to talk to you about today, when the slides come up, is safety, general safety. Things like maintenance, insurance for your aircraft, which are mandatory items, crew training, those are all mandatory items. But because I work for a medical device company, one of the things I also wanted to talk to you about was medical devices and also medical services that are available to business jet owners. These things on commercial aircraft, a lot of them are actually mandatory as well. So, for example, an AED, an automatic defibrillator, is something that's required on a commercial airline, whereas on a business jet, it's considered to be perfectly acceptable to fly from Shanghai to London with absolutely no medical equipment on board whatsoever. That's no medical kits, no AED, no kind of medical support or services at all for the benefit of the passengers and then also for the crew as well. Hopefully my slides will come.
They're fixing it quickly, but the slides are also available on the app if people want to go through on.
Can they put them down the... I know, I'm running out of things to say. This isn't nervous at all. This isn't nerve-wracking at all.
It was, if you start, Sarah, we'll get the slides up. The hotel's just fixing the projector, I think.
Okay, will they come down here? Can I see them on this down here, at least?
Sorry?
Can I see them down here?
Yeah, you can see them down there. It's working for you to click, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay, brilliant. All right. So again, the list of, I first of all started with some considerations. So I already mentioned maintenance, insurance, crew training, travel risk management and safety equipment. So the mandatory items there are the maintenance, insurance and crew training. The safety equipment are things like life rafts, medical kits, AEDs, actually having a personal doctor on board, and also telemedicine units, which are a very good idea. With all of these things, there's a cost, and I wanted to put this up straight away because it's one of the things that always comes up is, okay, how much does it cost? That always seems to be the biggest thing. How much do I have to pay to have these things on board? So obviously the life raft comes with the aircraft, so that's something that doesn't need to be considered. But medical kits can be anything up to around $3,000 and possibly even more, depending on what you have in your kits. So you can have basic medical kits, and you can also have kits that have potentially life-saving equipment in them, things like EpiPens and prescription drugs, etc. An AED will cost you up to about $3,000. You can pay less, depending on the type of AED that you require. And if you have an onboard doctor on board, that'll set you back about $5,000 per day. And then the telemedicine unit is around $50,000. It's a one-time cost. There are no continual added costs with it. It literally is a one-time purchase for the client. So my next slide has got a picture which is actually quite relevant, but I'll just have to skip that bit. So first of all, why bother? And why bother to have any of these things? Well, obviously with a life raft, if your flight becomes a cruise, it's going to be pretty useful, and it's included with the aircraft anyway. Medical kits, these are going to provide you fast and easy access to medication to manage any kind of situation, whether it's just a band-aid for a cut or some more significant medicine for greater conditions. And I mentioned before, even prescription drugs are available in some of these medical kits. Sorry, now my clicker's not working. Automatic electronic defibrillators, or AEDs. I just think it always ceases to amaze me how people are prepared to get on aircraft without one of these on board. It's pretty simple. If a heart goes into fibrillation, the only way you're going to save that person's life is if you've got an AED and you're able to defibrillate the heart. If you haven't, they're going to die. It's as simple as that. Onboard doctor, well, that's, I suppose, a nice to have, but if you can afford it, why wouldn't you? The only consideration to add to that is just to make sure that the doctor has an understanding of aviation medicine and of how things can change at altitude, and is familiar dealing with those kind of conditions that present themselves in those kind of situations. And then telemedicine. So a telemedicine unit is going to provide you with near instant access to a ground response centre, and it'll allow total interactivity between the aircraft and the ground, even at altitude. So what this means is that a passenger can be assessed and diagnosed by the doctors on the ground, and appropriate information and instructions can be given regards administering medication from medical kits, etc. And the vital signs that it's able to, the data that it's able to provide include even a 12-lead ECG, which is the only thing that's going to be able to determine whether a chest pain is as a result of a cardiac issue, or whether it's something more simple like anxiety or perhaps even indigestion, because both of those things present similar symptoms initially to a cardiac event. And then travel risk management. So this is something that more and more airlines and hopefully business jet owners are beginning to adopt. With travel risk management, it allows you to have a contingent plan in place should anything happen. Bad things happen all over the world these days. And this will help to give you all the data and information depending on where you're going, and also what you're flying over to in order to get there as well. If anything does happen during that trip, the risk management service will allow you to be able to get updates and information as to the best course of action to manage whatever kind of situation you find yourselves in. Being prepared for any eventuality, basically. And then the rationale for all of these things, why we should even consider them. Well, flying is increasingly popular. There are an increasing number of travellers. It's much more cost achievable than it once was. As a population as well, we're living longer. That means we're flying older. And unfortunately, as we get older, there are associated health concerns. So not only are we flying older, we're also flying sicker too. Diversions are expensive, so with commercial airlines, obviously having this kind of equipment on board is a bit of a no-brainer, because if you can avoid a diversion, it's going to save you an awful lot of money if you've got 300-400 passengers on board. From a business jet perspective, diversions can also be costly as well, though. If you're landing, if you're having to do an unscheduled landing, you have to consider things like fuel costs, you have to consider things like slots. Once you land, when are you going to be able to take off again? The time that's lost for the VIP who owns the aircraft, perhaps they were on their way to a meeting and they thought they were having a cardiac event. They landed the aircraft and then discovered that they weren't, and then the meeting time is lost. Potentially that's a loss of money as well. And then also from sticking with the VVIPs, from a stock and share perspective, reputation. So sometimes, depending on the client, if an aircraft is diverted and it gets into the media that there's been a diversion and there's a medical aspect to it, that can affect the stocks and shares of the company as well. And there's a lot of flights, medical incidents that happen on flights. I don't know if anybody wants to guess how many there are in a day. Any takers?
It's like 50.
Ah, brilliant. Okay, excellent. So yeah, around 50 per day. And this was statistics that were taken from a study at UPMC back in 2011. So one assumes that those have only increased. And then the reasons why people don't opt to have these things. So these are kind of the four primary reasons, which is I'm young and I'm fit, which is a pretty, well, in the face of it, I guess, an understandable reason, because we all like to think if we're young and fit, then we'll be fine. Unfortunately, medical incidents don't discriminate against age or youth. The other thing is I can just land if there's a problem. And again, that's a really great solution, depending on where you are when you have to make that landing. And not just where you are, but what resources are available on the ground when you do land. And then the last one is we've been fine so far, which is usually preceded by knock knock. And if you ask them, well, why do you do that? The answer is always, well, you never know what will happen, which is kind of the point. And then the last one, which isn't up there, is price. And so in answer to that, I guess it shouldn't be what price do I have to pay to have this equipment. I think a better way of looking at it would be what price will I have to pay if I don't have it. And perhaps, just to end, I think we should be looking at value these days more than just price. And that's it.